Welcome to A Flash of Beauty, the podcast, an audio experience dedicated to the further exploration of Bigfoot and the people Bigfoot has revealed itself to. What started as a documentary of personal narrative encounter stories and expert testimony has now shifted into a deeper inquiry into the forever changed lives of those that have witnessed firsthand this hidden truth. My name is Tobe Johnson, co-producer of Flash of Beauty Bigfoot Revealed. Join me along with the crew and creators of this doc, director Brett Eichenberger, producer Jill Rimmon-Snyder, and cinematographer Michael Ferry, as we go back into the trees to sit down once again with each guest in search of the truth, no matter how strange. Here we go again, Flash of Beauty back at you, Mike in the right-hand corner, Jill in the upper left-hand corner here, and Brett in the lower left-hand corner, also known as Big Ike. People should know that when we do this podcast, we can see each other in Brady Bunch mode on Zoom, so it's a little hard not to make fun. And Brett goes by Ike, which for me is so weird because his father is named Ike, and the first replica Sasquatch I made was for a pizza parlor. It's where I started this little thing called Bigfoot and Beer. And at Ike's Pizza, you could go once a month and hang out in front of Big Ike and tell Bigfoot stories. I don't know. There's no coincidences, is there, Brett?
There's no coincidences. Zero. It's true.
It's crazy.
I know when I first learned that, I got the chills. And here's something else too that you probably don't know is that, I don't know if I've ever told you this. My dad went as, his nickname was Big Ike. My last name's Eichenberger. My grandfather went by Ike as well. My dad had a cameo in a C movie starring Tonya Harding. My dad was cameoed as a gangster that gets shot, and his name was Big Ike in the credits. So there's that. Yeah.
Wow.
Kind of weird. Yeah.
I haven't heard her name for quite a while, but the imagery I have of those mall bangs, the Aquanet mall bangs, is just like, it's such a turn on, actually.
Yeah, I've got stories. I'll have to do another podcast about that someday. Yeah.
All right. Well, our next guest isn't Tanya. She wasn't available, but we have a good runner up here. Sonya Zohar is our guest. You know, Sonya is featured in the documentary Creekside, and then we take her down to the Al Moon Lab, and she is an empath. She feels nature and all that's around it. And Sasquatch, being the ultimate forest friend, is obviously going to feel that. And so we get into it with her in this interview and talk all things empath and Sasquatch. And I think you'll be shocked at the direction this goes. I don't know, what shocked you guys?
I don't know about shocking, but I just love the trajectory that of where her introduction into the subject matter, just kind of what she thought she was looking for versus what she discovered along the way. I know that sounds like I'm pitching some terrible family film.
Is this a Lifetime special you're pitching, Jill? Go ahead.
It could be. Give me a minute. No, but really, she got into this, after watching a TV special about it, and she thought she was looking for this forest monkey. Those are my words, not hers. She's a much more better spoken, very elegant in her presentation of the subject. But she was looking for, she thought she was out there looking for a, undiscovered primate of some sort. And her experiences that she's had on this journey have just been amazing. And we only got the tip of the iceberg. In the full interview that we conducted when we started the documentary, she is just a valuable resource. Her knowledge and experiences are really something that I believe are moving the needle in research.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think one of the special things about Sonia is how she got into the researching aspect of it. You know, so many folks that we've interviewed for our film, and folks that we haven't interviewed for our film, people that we've met through our film, have gotten into this because they've had a sighting, they've had an experience. Very few people have gone out and done the research because they're interested in taking part in the Bigfoot world or the world of Bigfoot and the experience. And she saw, you know, this show, it perked her interest. She'd always been interested in, you know, stuff like this, history and anthropology. And that really motivated her to get out there and look for the answers herself, experience it herself. And I think that's important for people. I think that, you know, there's a lot of people out there that might be afraid to do that, or they might come up with excuses. And I would encourage everybody to get out there with an open mind and, you know, look for things. You don't have to have a sighting to indoctrinate yourself into this world. You know, what you do have to have is an open mind, and you have to have the willingness to go out into the wilderness and, you know, be ready to experience something.
There might be something to women getting closer to evidence, especially this one more so than men, just based upon the approach and the fact that there's other things going on genetically and hormone wise that may attract said Sasquatch. Jill, you're rolling your eyes. I can see it happen here, but it's true. I can tell you stories right now about how guys approach this and the levels that they go to have contact involve women coming with them one way or another. Let's just leave it at that. And Sonia may be the person. She may be the Jane Goodall of our time. I've seen a lot of women throughout this field the last 15 years kind of come and go. A lot of guys as well, you know, but although Sonia is in the shadows researching, you don't find a YouTube video of her. This is the first big documentary. There's a couple that she's in the shadows of, but she really is in the shadows on purpose. And we talk about maybe why she's in the shadows and the strange, well, I shouldn't say strange, but the interesting people she's met, particularly in Canada. Yes, Jill.
And just to add on what you're saying, and I will say this based on, you know, when we went to the Owl Moon Wilderness with Sonia, and that first night when we were out there, I mean, she's pretty fearless about being in the woods. She wasn't fazed at all. And she was under the impression that we were going to camp out there, which I could take a lesson from her, because I'm not very self-sufficient in the woods. But no, if someone's going to have an experience, it will definitely be her, because she's not afraid to be out in the woods, you know, and putting herself out there.
And she's not afraid to interact. I mean, if she gets into sticky situations where, you know, she tells some pretty harrowing stories in the interview, and she starts to ask questions, and, you know, why are you doing this? You know, you're not gonna scare me, that kind of thing. She's totally fearless. And, you know, and that's when you're going to start getting contact, when you kind of, you know, you just break down that fear level. And, you know, that's a huge obstacle, I think. And it's just not something that's bothering her when she's out in the woods.
And we didn't get into it, but she's also a bit of a biblical scholar. In fact, a religion scholar, and has looked at, we may get into it in part 2, but she definitely has researched, you know, world religions as it approaches these ideas of the other, and looking into what that other can be and how to approach it. And, you know, that's probably the best name we can give Sasquatch, is the other. We really have no idea what's going on here, but we get into it. Any final thoughts here before we get into the interview?
Other than just, you know, if you're out there, keep your eye on Sonia. If there's such thing as a rising star in the Bigfoot world or the world of paranormal, Sonia's on the list for sure.
Yeah, reluctant, but try to pry her out of the woodwork here and get more conferences and and Showtime with Sonya Zohar. Here we go. Here with us now is Sonya Zohar. Hello, Sonya.
Hello, good evening.
It's great to have you on the line with us. On board here is the crew and brains behind the documentary, and somehow I weaseled my way into the picture as well. And we have some burning questions here for the understated but well-versed Sonya Zohar on all things Sasquatch. Are you ready?
I am. Thank you so much for having me. And I thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, throughout the documentary, Sonya, you paint a picture of Sasquatch in a different way than a lot of researchers. In fact, you're kind of an, as I say, understated Bigfoot researcher, but in my opinion, probably closer than anybody I know, especially out in this area, looking into the subject matter. And you say some really interesting things. So I'll start off with the first question here. In particular, as I reach over my desk here, you talk about contact. It's going to take contact for us to approach this issue of Sasquatch and proof. Now, of course, everybody's going to think you're talking about Jodie Foster and making contact that way, but I don't really know what you mean by that. So explain to the audience contact.
I think when we look at the field of research, what usually happens is a lot of people go out into the woods and they have a lot of equipment and they make a lot of noise, and even if they actually stay out there for the full time, and people the approach is very interesting. My experience of people who do the work, the approach is very interesting in that if you think about it in a scientific way, it takes 8 years to habituate gorillas, the silverback gorillas in the wild, before humans can go out there and be around them. So we have the species that is, and the silverbacks are not something you would typically call highly elusive. Sasquatch, whatever it is highly elusive. We don't have a body. We can't find a body that we know of. So it's going to take habituation and actually contact to prove scientifically the species. That's what I mean. We're going to have some sort of dialogue, because as it stands right now, we can't film them, we cannot track them, we can't kill them, and we can't find them, and we don't have a body. And those are the things that science wants. That's what society wants. We want these hard evidences, and right now we can't supply them. So my only suggestion is that we actually try contact, which means habituation, which means probably a lot longer than 8 years of someone scientifically being in one spot researching them.
Okay, great. But do you think that contact for the sake of proof is important? Do you think that the evidence for the scientific community needs to be established for them to thrive, for us to thrive? And I mean, we can go right to the question and ask you what you think they are, but I think I might know, but why don't you answer both those questions?
Do you think so? Restate the question. Are you asking me, do you think it's safe for our species to have contact with them, or their species?
Well, my question is, do you think it's for the betterment of the discovery that they're found out, that they are in a way studied? I mean, after all, contact, with humans doesn't always turn out well.
I know, and that's a great question. And I mean, that's a great question for all scientific discovery, and it's one that we never really answer. I mean, we do all kinds of things, unfortunately, that, that's a very good question, Tobe. That's how I'm going to answer that, is that's a very good question. I don't know that answer, if it would be better for us to know them or to not know them. And in the spirit of scientific research and discovery, at the same time, not being able to answer that question, I'm still compelled to seek them out.
Hi, Sonia. So
Hi.
just to follow on that, you just mentioned like still you seek them out. Do you feel that as a whole, the way researchers are going about trying to make contact and trying to collect evidence and find like proof for themselves, do you think that that's hindering? Or like, I guess what I'm trying to say is there a right way and a wrong way that researchers should be interacting?
Well, I don't think it's all just based on results. Who's having results with what they're doing? I mean, that's really what it comes down to. What's based on results? Who is actually getting evidences, and who in the genre that's researching is having results? It's been my experience, those that are having results are people who are actually taking the time to be in the forest, and they're not usually taking cameras. They're not trying to measure them or catch them, or they're actually, wanting to interact with them. And they have, like I said, those types of researchers have the best evidence.
Sonia, it's Brett.
Hi, Brett.
Hey, so here's kind of a loaded question: why is it that we need to know? Is it out of selfishness that we just need to know and be king and queen of everything on planet Earth? Or do we need to know more about us as humans? What do you think?
Well, it's also a really good question, because it does imply that whole idea: is it best for them to be known? Who is it best for? And given the body of scientific work and knowing the answer to that in so many ways, that humans really do build and do science and technology for its own sake, not ever thinking of the consequences. So part of your answer is definitely yes. I don't know the answer to that, but personally, on a personal level, I think that Sasquatch adds to the story of human history. So how can you not want to know our history and all of it and all that it entails and all that it implies? And especially not only to the human story, if we are able to prove somehow that Sasquatch is, as many theorize Sasquatch to be, and that is interdimensional, then there's actually a scientific level of physics, I would think, that would want to study maybe some being that is actually maybe traversing in parallel universes. And again, this is all based on the idea that if there are people who theorize that Sasquatch is an interdimensional being, even Native Americans say that there are some Native Americans who say Sasquatch lives in two worlds. So what does that mean? So, if we are able to, so I think there's interest on many layers of scientific research in adding to the human story. So I think Sasquatch, and I think that personally as well, that's why I do it. And again, the consequence of it, how's it going to turn out? I don't know.
Do you think, one last question, do you think that there's a possibility that they're monitoring the maturity of the human race? In other words, when we were all children, our parents would go out to an adult party, and we had no concept of what that meant or what that entailed, or had no interest in what it was that they did at their adult evening night out with friends. And this is a horrible analogy, but my feeling is that they're the adults, the party, and we're the kids messing up the house, lighting things on fire, destroying things. I mean, we can't take care of ourselves, let alone our planet. Do you think there's any possibility that they're hiding and waiting until we grow up before they come out and say, okay, now that you've grown up, I can teach you some adult things?
I think that question, is it built on the idea that maybe they're the watchers? Is that what you're implying with that question?
Yeah, more or less. Like
Yeah.
they're actually in charge. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and
I've heard similar theories with the aliens too, and turning off nukes and that kind of stuff.
there's so many theories, Brett, and there's plausibility to a lot of them. But the idea that they're the watchers is my favorite, right? Like when you tie in the story of Rebecca and Esau of the Bible, and the whole idea that there are two nations on the earth and one is going to be weaker, the other will be stronger, one is there to help the other. And then you kind of tie that in with the whole Sasquatch idea and tie it in with Native American. There's a Native American myth that says, or story that says that Sasquatch appear to us at the end of times. I think that there might be some truth to that. That's where I might find some truth to the story of Sasquatch, is that they might be the watchers. I do tend to believe that.
I hope so. I really hope so.
You know, part of the struggle here we're having, Sonia, is to keep it flesh and blood, and rushing down the rabbit hole. It just seems to be the way this show goes, and I try to steer it. Even with everything bonkers that's gone on in my life, I still try to steer this conversation to the flesh and blood, just because it is what we shot in the first documentary. We don't tell the story kind of till the very end, that maybe there's something else going on here. Did your journey start in the world of flesh and blood and end with, out of the box thinking and crystals and, babbling brooks? tell me your story. How did this start?
Well, there's a huge bit of irony, because so I'm an empath, and I have been since I was a child. So I've always been aware that reality isn't as hard set as most experience reality to be. And I was very open-minded about everything. I mean, even aliens as a child, like I was never like, is that true? Is it not true? I just thought there's so many stars in the universe. How could it not be possible? Everything seems so huge. Just seems like aliens, big deal. Is it or not? And then everything else I kind of had an open mind to, especially ghosts. Of course there were ghosts. I experienced that. So I knew that was that there. So I had this tendency already to be very open-minded. But the irony is I was completely closed-minded to Bigfoot. And that's because we traveled a lot when I was a child, and I had seen the jackalope in the Southwest, and I was very certain that was not real. And so then when we also would drive and travel in the Pacific Northwest and we'd see those carvings of Bigfoot, then I somehow just made this association with these carvings in stores where you stop, that Bigfoot thing could not be real either. So I had just dismissed it completely. Although, the reason, and there's even more irony, because Jane Goodall and Diane Fossey were my heroes, right? I loved anthropology. I loved the study of non-human primates. I studied that in college, and I study, anytime I click on to anything on the internet, if there's a news article about archaeology or primatology, I click onto it. I'm fascinated with it. And but I didn't believe in Bigfoot. I just thought it was a roadside thing. And then I saw a TV show when I was living in Los Angeles. And Jimmy Chilcutt was on that show, and he got on there to say he would stake his 20-year career as a fingerprint expert, that there was a non-disclosed, non-human bipedal primate in North America. And he would stake his career on that. And it was based on a cast that had dermal ridges. Now you're talking. Like, that was really interesting to me. That caught my attention. It not only caught my attention, something in me, like physically and emotionally, shifted. And I went downstairs. I had an office in the downstairs of the house, and I went downstairs and I turned on my computer and I researched the best Bigfoot evidence. Of course, Patty, the Gimlin film, came up, and I watched that for a year. For a year, I watched that film to prove to myself whether or not I thought that was real or a hoax. And then once I decided that that film was true enough for me to say that that was real, everything changed. And then I just became a researcher.
So I want to jump ahead. So we've established that we're starting out in the flesh and blood. And I might be jumping the gun here a little bit, but some of the experiences that you shared with us during your initial interview, they had elements that were a little bit more than flesh and blood. And I'm thinking specifically about the story about the sound of the leaves. Do you recall what I'm talking about? I think you were out on the East Coast and it was the sound of something rushing up on you, but nothing was there.
Well, there was something there. I could go through and share that with you, but let me go back to the really quick and let me make sure I finish the flesh and blood. So even when I saw Jimmy Chilcutt's, thing, I immediately went to the whole idea that this had to be a relic hominid, Neanderthal, or Gigantopithecus. So yes, I started off completely flesh and blood. And then my very first encounter, the essence of when I actually physically started to look for them, I knew right away that it was different. However, let me go back to your question now, Jill. That situation was an encounter I had in Canada, yes, around the Algonquin National Park. And it was just one of the scariest experiences I ever had. And it had to do with me being out at around 11 p.m. on a snowmobile trail in October. And so the trash sound were these leaves. And something came down this hillside towards my colleague and I, and it was the sound of the leaves of something coming towards us. And it really sounded like it could have been a deer. It was just a very little trash, boom. It stopped, I think, when it saw us. And then it went trash the other way. And my friend right away, my colleague, said, "Oh, that's Sasquatch." And I really was not, I did not believe that. It really could have been a deer. And that's the sound, that's kind of the sound and the size that I really felt it was. But I just said, okay, maybe it was, I don't know. The next night we went out and we were about maybe half a mile away from that spot, but the land was flat here and we were still on a snowmobile road. But we were sitting on this road and I was really watching the trees and really just kind of watching for anything that might move. And there was a slight moon and there was a slight mist, and it was October, so it was pretty cool. And you could kind of see through the trees. And then all of a sudden from behind me, from my left, came this trash, boom, trash. But it came from a distance that was so far away. And whatever it was so big. And it stopped behind me so hard. And then it veered off to the right. It came from the left, it veered to the right. And then what was actually scary about this in the moment, what was scary was that the last one went trash and then trash. And it was very apparent to me in the moment that that last trash was telling me how far it could go and how fast and how lightly it could touch. It was letting me know it could do that. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Whatever ran up on me so fast, my body didn't move forward. I didn't move. I didn't cogitate that something was coming towards me until the boom behind me, and it was as big as a bull, and I didn't even have the moment to think, am I going to die? I knew something was coming at me that could kill me. Obviously, it was huge. But my body physically, I wasn't stunned. I literally didn't have my body didn't move forward. It was over that quick. So whatever came up on me like on the speed of sound, and it was huge. And then it wasn't until 2 days later that I had put the 2 evenings together back to back and realized that what happened the first night was replicated in this following evening. It was trash, 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 trash. It was trash, 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 boom, trash, trash. And that's exactly what it did the second night. And then that's when I realized that whatever it was telling me, it was definitely not a deer and what it was capable of. And that's when I realized, very much alive in my being, that you can't track it, you can't catch it, you can't kill it. Like, you have no idea what it can do and how fast it can move.
Hi, Sonia, it's Mike.
Hi.
Just a quick question. That's a fascinating story, but it's also, it's you bring up habituation and contact, and it's frustrating because it's like you get these experiences, you get glimpses of contact, but nothing really happens, and it's sometimes it's more scary than anything, and it's intimidating. Are we going to have to like completely reset our thinking to be able to get contact? Like, are we ever going to, do you think it's ever going to get to a Jane Goodall's type of situation where we're actually watching them out in in their environment when they're here? I mean, it's just, it's like, who makes the first move, right? It's hard to know if it's the ball's in their court or if the ball's in our court.
I think it's in their court always. And I think that's why the research really doesn't really get done on a scientific level. And those who do it, I think there's some truth to even what in the question that you just asked. Would it ever get to a level of Jane Goodall style where you could actually watch them? And an honest answer is, I don't know that. I don't know that. I don't think anybody could know that.
Well, and with Native Americans, it was, it's verbally, historically documented with them that they had a relationship. So, what are we doing wrong, I guess, and what are we missing out on if there was a relationship in the past, and what did that relationship look like?
Well, I mean, I think that would be really obvious. Humans are modern humans, and I'm not saying that Native Americans are not modern humans, but Western civilized humans, we think differently, we act differently, we smell different, we're so removed from nature. I remember reading one story where a chief had met with a group of Europeans, and said that they constantly were looking around like they were looking for something, because we couldn't figure out what they were looking for. And when you think about that, the energy that one brings to the forest, civilized humans don't. I don't know how to explain it, and I'm trying to not trying to walk very lightly here and not make any sort of slurs about anybody or insinuate that anybody's lesser or greater. It's just that those people that were having relationships with those Sasquatch were living in peace with the earth. They may not have lived with peace with each other, but that's natural. Every species on the planet wars for territory. But when the Europeans came, their energy was very, very different, and always has been. And so I think any gentle species, but smart, but quirky, but way masterful, would back away. I mean, it makes sense that they would just back away.
Brett,
Yeah. So can you hear me okay?
you're coming in loud and clear.
Okay. It seems to me like maybe how am I trying to phrase this? Seems to me like technology might be the way that we end up meeting. And I guess what I mean by that is, they obviously have abilities that are beyond even our science. We can't observe it, we can't measure it. But at some point or another, we're going to catch up. Humans are going to catch up. And just like the story that you told us about, that occurred to you in Canada, at what point, I guess is what I'm trying to say, is at what point do humans have those same abilities? Because when we do, you look at the rapid move of technology right now with even FLIR cameras. I mean, the things that have happened in the last 5 to 10 years, technology wise, is, I mean, a camera in everybody's pocket. We're starting to see Bigfoot photos and videos, and who knows how many of those are real. But I have a feeling that a good portion of them are real. So the question is that when will we have these abilities to disappear, or to sense objects that are invisible to the naked eye, or to the invisible to cameras? Do you have any thoughts on that, Sonia?
I really hadn't thought about, the advancement of technology, especially in capturing things that are not available to the naked eye. I hadn't thought about that, actually.
Have you seen Barb Shoop's video of the cloaker?
No.
Okay.
You should probably go download that tonight, Sonia, because that's a prominent piece of what I would call cryptid evidence, right, Brett?
Yeah. So, okay. Also, I'll tell you a little bit about it. I saw this video a couple of years ago, maybe even 3 or 4 years ago, and I was like, yeah, there's something there. There's something weird going on. But I saw it on YouTube, and YouTube compresses videos, and the object the individual is so small in the frame that I thought, yeah, it could be compression artifacts or tricks of light or whatever. And so I got a hold of Barb Shoop, and I asked her if I could get a copy of the video. She was like, yeah, no problem. She has nothing to hide. And I took the video and I spent 3 hours upresing it to 4K and analyzing it. And I've been a video professional my entire life, practically since the age of 13. So we're talking 34 years of experience with video. And I was looking for anything, either in the technology itself, whether it was compression or in tricks of light. And what the video shows is it shows a figure that is cloaked, looks like the predator, just like everybody says, and it drops and turns and runs away. And I watched it over and over and over again, each time looking for something new to give it away. And I finally reached a point where the hair stood on the back of my neck because I realized I had run out of any and every explanation that didn't involve it being real. And so I've come to the conclusion that it is 100% authentic. And I came to this conclusion with my knowledge of visual effects and how things are done. I'm not an expert in visual effects, but I know what it would take to do something like this. And it would be A, expensive, and B, extremely difficult. And if Hollywood were to do it, just similar to the Patterson Gimlin costume, quote unquote costume, if Hollywood were to do it, it would cost tens of thousands of dollars. And she shot this in 2014, so it would have been even harder. So you see this transparent cloaked figure, and it runs off into the woods. And what was really interesting, what I didn't know is we went up and we interviewed Barb about the video that she took and stuff. And she says, oh yeah, well, I saw it out of the corner of my eye in real life and it was black. Actually, what I saw was black, but what the camera recorded was transparent, was cloaked. So I guess the point of me saying all this is that there is technology even available today that is seeing these things, that is picking up these things, that is enabling us to, study, I guess, because this is a clip. I think when we pointed out in the sequel, when I show a little bit more of the analysis, I think people are going to go back and really watch this thing and they're going to be blown away by it. And I just so happen to show it. This is a tease for the film, spoiler alert. We just so happened to show it to Eric Bard from Skinwalker Ranch, and he about fell out of his seat. He had no explanation for it. So I feel like we're on the precipice of really being able to capture some undebunkable stuff, I guess, even with AI and everything else out there. I think we're getting really close.
Well, you're probably right. And having met Barb and hung out with her, there's no way in hell that she hoaxed that footage. That's just out of line. It's either camera artifact or something else. And it gets into interesting territory because, Sonia, you're not a techno nerd. You're not out with FLIR cameras. I don't know you to be that kind of person. What do you think the consequences are of bringing tech out into the natural world, since it seems so counternatural, even though it is basically the dirt from the ground that has made these objects in every sense of the word and way of describing that? But tech seems to piss them off or push them back. What do you think that's about?
Well, I think that's true. And so, I mean, that's one of the challenges also. They don't like it. And it's not unusual for beings in nature to not like cameras. Most animals don't. I mean, if you think about, I know some animals are kind of getting used to trail cams and we get great photos on them, but usually you'll get one photo of the animal in there and then the next photo, it's gone. It's like, oh, you took a picture, I'm gone out of here now. Like, animals have a tendency to not like them. I watched a documentary of these people tracking Siberian tigers and watching their territories, and they got one image of a Siberian tiger, one image of the female. They knew that was her territory, and the only image of her, her face is turned from a great distance and she's hissing at the camera. And they never caught an image of her again. So that's just kind of natural, actually. And so yeah. But it is fascinating. Our technology is better, and there's there's two things to be said about that too, like people seeing these things more and more. And it has to do with something I learned from, I think it was the Missing 411. They were talking about the electromagnetic energy on Mount Shasta, where people had disappeared. And they were talking about how in places of high paranormal activities, the electromagnetic energy changes. Well, what's really interesting about that is when electromagnetic energy changes, so do the laws of physics. So so things might be able to be more available to us when there's maybe, I'd say that could be what we could call a glitch in the matrix, right? A spot where the laws of physics are different from where I'm standing in this moment. I don't know how that could look like or what that could feel like, but obviously there's a difference, because those are the places where we have higher levels of paranormal activity. And so with all of these new technical devices and all of these new electromagnetic waves we have around us at all times now, all types of currents, and I'm sure we are going to get more things on camera. We are going to see more things. I think that just our kind of heightened electrical world might make that more plausible.
One real quick point before Jill asks a question. We've had this discussion before about electromagnetic energy and how animals can pick up on it. I mean, obviously, birds have extremely advanced magnets that allow them to, migrate from Alaska to South America and get to the exact same spot every single time, which to me is extraordinary. But you go back to the Patterson-Gimlin film, and that camera was a film camera. That was an analog camera. That was not sending out electromagnetic vibes, if you will. So there's no, nothing is picking up on any sort of frequencies in the air. It's analog. Whereas these wildlife cameras that are everywhere, iPhones, I don't think, or cell phones, I don't think do it as much, but wildlife cameras are stacked with batteries. They've got infrared, they've got all kinds of stuff that, Sasquatches or any animal, from a possum to an elk to a raccoon is going to sense and pick up on. It's going to sense a vibe out there. So anyways, that's just something that we've talked about throughout the course of the production of the documentary.
So, hi, it's me again.
Hi.
Sonia, I was hoping, can you share with us just some of the incredible experiences you have had out in the field? I know you've talked about, you shared with us about having rocks being hurled at you that came within inches of hitting, and almost having a dialogue, letting them know you were aware of their presence, and just some of the things you've encountered while actually being boots on the ground.
Yeah, well, I have had the rock throw, the famous rock throw. I was in Canada, and coming down a trail, I was with two colleagues. We had to be out of the national park by 11 p.m. So we were heading down this trail, and we were getting close to, we're getting pretty close to where the vehicles were. And I had been walking ahead of my colleagues. I was probably about 15 feet ahead of them when a rock hit the tree right next to them. And when I turned around, I swung around, I could see them, both of them reacting, jumping in the air. I could see debris coming off of the tree. And I realized right away that whatever that was, or what, if that had hit one of us, it could have killed us. And so my reaction to it right away was to like talk to it. Like, oh my God, I don't know. You know, we had had we had we had been hearing some things while we had been out there that night, but nothing again substantial that to me would say this was a Sasquatch. Things move in the forest at night. So when we were coming down the trail, that rock hit. I so I kind of had Sasquatch on the mind, but when the rock hit, I mean, I didn't know what could possibly have done that. And I said right away, I felt for my safety. I just said right away, like, you know, we mean you no harm, but I also was sending out the body, energy of don't you hurt me, like don't you dare hurt me. And then we continued down the trail, and I don't know, maybe it wasn't even a minute later, like this big, huge rock got lobbed down the hill. And you could just tell it lobbed like a softball. Boom, 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 boom. And then I realized that it was just playing. I just had this realization it was just playing with us. And so I said to it, I'd be back out the next week. And that's what the plan was. And so I went back, we got back to the vehicle, and we heard these very strange sounds, these very strange vocalizations when we got back to the car. I'm still not convinced they weren't some kind of bird, but we were surrounded by them, and I don't know what kind of bird makes that kind of sound. And I did look and listen to a lot of vocalizations. I could not found one yet. So that was very interesting. But so that was definitely the time we got the rocks thrown. And then there's been some other times out with colleagues. One time they were so sure we were being followed by something in the daytime, and I wasn't. Again, I'm always a little skeptic. I'm like, oh my God, it could be a deer, it could be a bear, it could be another hiker up there, whatever. Anyway, but then something started making just this really loud noise, and then it threw a rock. And I remember turning towards the hillside and like running through this creek on the other side, but also turning around and facing the hillside, like preparing myself, thinking that a boulder was coming at me, completely believing that this rock was so huge that I better turn around and know where it was so I could get out of its path. Now, it wasn't that big. I definitely was exaggerating what the size of this thing was, but it was huge. That's the way it made me feel. So those were some of the rock throws.
Have you had a visual encounter of any kind? Eye shine, silhouette of shadows, things of that nature?
I've seen the red reflected lights, and was said that would be a Sasquatch, but I also know that owls have red reflective light. So no, I really haven't seen them. I've heard them, I've felt them, I've exchanged vocalizations with them. I've had gift exchanges, but I have not had the visual.
Have you been?
Oh, go ahead there. Big
sorry,
Egg.
quick question. Have you been zapped by them before?
You mean
well, hold on a second here. I'm going to edit this together. Ask the question here in 3, 2, 1. Brett, you had a question.
Yeah. Have you been zapped, as in infrasound?
Yes, I have.
And what was that like? What was that experience like?
Well, I was out with, it was when I was out with Jeff Meldrum and Dr. Pendernagel and Todd Standing, and it's the evening that we had something come into camp. And I went out into the tree line and I confronted. And when I got out there, I really wasn't afraid because, you know, I had 5 colleagues standing behind me, and 2 of them had guns. And it was frightening, but I wasn't terrified. I mean, there was a fire behind there, were humans in the campground, and I don't know, it was just like, can you confront? Because they believed there was something there. And so I walked into the tree line and I started to make some vocalizations and talk to it. And then I noticed that my knees were shaking. And it was odd because I didn't feel the same amount of fear in my chest and in my heart. And I remember I had to like kind of even coach myself, like, whoa, Sonia, you're okay. Like, you're fine. You don't have to be that afraid. But I sat there and I tried to do some vocalizations, initiated some sort of contact, and nothing happened. So I came back and I sat down. And I remember when I sat down, I think it was Dr. Meldrum said, you know, weren't you afraid? And aren't you afraid? And I was like, no, but I'm really tired. And that was what was really weird. I was like, I was really tired. And I can still feel it in my body. Like it's like, you know, trauma. You can still feel the experience. When you have a Sasquatch experience, it never leaves you. You can still feel exactly what it felt like. That's why I might sound a bit dramatic when I'm telling these stories, but I still feel them when I'm telling them to you. Like when I was talking about being in Canada and that thing coming up behind me, like I still felt it. And right now, when I'm telling you about this, when I walked into that tree line and my knees were shaking, my knees, I can feel all of it. And then when I sat down, I was exhausted. And then I went to bed that night and I was so tired. I crawled up in a fetal ball in my sleeping bag and I went all the way down to the bottom of my bag, which was really unusual because I like to have fresh air when I sleep. And then all of a sudden, I don't know, it was like about 2 a.m, then the fear hit. And I was so afraid. Like I woke up and I was just terrified until sunrise. I couldn't move. I was like shaking, afraid, and I had to go to the bathroom and I wouldn't get up. I wouldn't even look out of my sleeping bag. And then finally, when it got light and I felt more comfortable that people were going to wake up, and I got up out of my sleeping bag, and then the tops of my thighs, they were like on fire, like lactic acid, like I had done 25,000 squats the day before. Now, I didn't know I'd been hit for infrasound. I didn't know what was happening. I just knew I was tired. I was weak. My legs hurt. And I was just this unbelievably exhausted. And then what happened is this lasted for almost 2 weeks. Like even when I got home, I felt like I'd had maybe I thought I had a mild heart attack. So I actually did see a doctor. I went in and she's like, no, you haven't had a heart attack. But I was honest with her. I told her what happened. Like, I really believe I may have confronted a Sasquatch. I know it would be the craziest thing telling your doctor, but it was really the truth. What happened? And I go, and I've been weak ever since. And she goes, well, you know, Sonia, it does sound to me like you were scared to your core. She goes, you can get scared to your core. She goes, you're going to be fine, but you're weak. Just rest. And I really was. For like 2 weeks. I would lose breath walking from my couch to my front door of my house. It was crazy. So the way I found out that was infrasound, though, is I would be out in that same location maybe 2 years later with Dr. Susan McDonald. And she is a wildlife ecologist at the University of Toronto. And she works with elephants and gorillas. And elephants have infrasound, and she got hit with infrasound. And when I was telling her my experience of what happened the last time I was at that location, she said, oh, she goes, oh, and the burning in your thighs, she goes, oh, that's infrasound. You got hit with infrasound. And so I researched it, and there is some possibility that gorillas use infrasound. So if gorillas use infrasound, it's not a leap that Sasquatch would use infrasound. So yeah, I believe I got hit with infrasound, and all of my symptoms were exactly that. So yeah.
Fascinating.
Sonia, my last question to you here is your connections to Canada, in particular Canadian intelligence, and what you've been involved with off the record. Do you feel comfortable talking about that? Is that an area we can go?
Well, I don't know how much I'm going to say about it, but I'm open to, I think what I would share about that with, well, I'm curious to want to know what it is that you want to know. And I'll be as open as I can be.
Said like a true spy. Oh, let's see here. Should I ask it in Russian? Should I go to Chinese, Mandarin? As far as your involvement with working with these colleagues of yours here that have vested interest and funding coming their way, my question to you is, have people, I think that there's some counterintelligence stuff that may have been happening to you in private. We're not quite sure. I don't know if you want to talk about that. Were you studying Sasquatch for the Canadian government? If so, what department? And how close am I to the truth? Am I way off?
No. I think I've made some comments that I think it's very interesting, since I've been doing Sasquatch work, that I have met people at certain levels of life that I don't think I haven't met in other walks of life. Meaning I have met people that work at high levels of government. I just think I think it's odd. That's all I would say about that. I have befriended people that work, someone in particular that works for the Canadian government, but that contact came through the Bigfoot research, which I just think it's unusual. Not like, and it could be a complete coincidence, but like I said, I've met several people that have different governmental clearances in the US and Canada since I've been doing Bigfoot. And supposedly that's random. And so, right. So they're all my friends and they're colleagues. I don't work for anybody, or I don't work with them. I include them in the pool of colleagues that I have, because they are colleagues that I have. And I try not to make up anything about it more than just stating the fact that I personally do think it's kind of unusual. And that's what I would want to say about that.
So the people that claim that they have discrete individuals show up at their doorstep after collecting evidence or after an incredible sighting that may be documented too well, that say that these two men, generally, one more demure and businesslike, the other one looks like an MMA guy, obviously an intimidating duo of sorts. I think that usually they say they're from the Department of Interior. I may have that wrong. I don't know if that's what the badge that they flash. Can you confirm or deny that they're government bodies that intimidate Bigfoot witnesses? Have you yourself been intimidated?
I don't yes, I do believe so. But then at the same time, I do want to be fair about that. I mean, i- is it just something in general when people are in any sort of genre that people attack them? I felt, like I said, I think some of the whole genre of Bigfoot for me has been very fascinating, because sometimes I feel attacked, and I feel it's so unusual that why would you be so why would anybody care about what I'm interested in? I mean, Bigfoot is just something that I am interested in, and something that I like to talk about and I like to research. And so I've always been fascinated when people are very strongly opposed to that, or make up stories about me and publish them, or try to cast people in a negative light. But at the same time, when I say that, it seems that anytime you're in a fringe genre, which Bigfoot is a fringe genre, you do attract that type of attention. So I wouldn't think that I wouldn't want to say maybe that it's so personal that I've been attacked specifically, more than maybe that people that are trying to talk about truthful topics are attacked. And that is something I think we should all be concerned about. It doesn't matter what I want to talk about, but why would I be attacked for that?
Well, you must be over the target. And if you want to see Sonia over more targets, what better place than Forks, Washington? You have a possibility of seeing her, several other guests from the documentary coming up this Memorial Day weekend. I believe that's the weekend of the 26th through the 28th in Forks, Washington, the second annual Sasquatch Festival. Sonia, you don't live that far from there. Can we convince you to come on one of those days and wax poetic in front of my Bigfoot statue?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Sonya Zohar, she's promised here. She's made a pinky swear she's going to be there. You know, there's going to be 2 venues here, folks, and we haven't talked a lot about that. But if you go on the website at sasquatchthelegend.com, yes, you can get a ticket. We'd love to see you, see all the PowerPoints and see all the surprises, including a debate between Aper versus Woo with Thomas Seawood and Rich Germeau. Talk about fireworks, but across the street over at Sasquatch the Legend gift store, museum, and now barista, oh my espresso, you can check out this impromptu day that we're going to have on Saturday, the 27th, where we're going to have witness testimony. Thomas Seawood's gal, Peggy Seawood, is going to be there across the street doing live streams, and that's going to be available at the Sasquatch the Legend YouTube channel. And it's your chance to hang out, do all things Bigfoot, and usually the home of vampires and werewolves. But, you know, Forks is becoming this mecca for all things Sasquatch. So to not have Sonia there would be a crime. We don't want to commit any more crimes than perhaps going along with this podcast here, but we're happy to do it. Sonia, thanks for providing us with an hour of your time here, and we look forward to seeing you in about 30 days.
Thank you so very much for having me. Thank you so much.
This has been a Resonance Productions podcast. If you have questions, comments, or your own encounter story you would like to relay to the show, email us at bigfootrevealedpod@gmail.com. Also, if you're just discovering us, you can watch our documentary, A Flash of Beauty, Bigfoot Revealed, on most major video streaming platforms.